Hey everybody, thanks for hanging out with me for just a couple of minutes. Here, our focus is being better and healthier than yesterday. Are you better? Are you healthier than you were yesterday? Here, we don't compare ourselves to him or to her, we compare ourselves to who we were yesterday. Self improvement has no end, health has no finish line. They are lifelong journeys where we take it one day at a time, and here we do it together. So let's do this. Before I get into the main content, if you want to get in contact with me, email and Instagram are the best ways to get in contact. Email me at benpagedc@gmail.com and on Instagram, benpagedc. And if you're listening to this, go to Instagram, tag me on the episode, and I'll tag you right back, and we get to know each other. I love to get to know the community, and I would love to get to know you. So let's get on to the main content. Welcome back to the Wellness Farmer Podcast. Today is episode 299, and I'm Ben Page, your host. And today we are talking with Neil Cannon. Neil Cannon has gone through a journey of healing himself, and now he shares it with other people and helping them heal themselves. And the more I learn about who we are, the more I understand that the only way to heal is through our natural innate ability to heal ourselves. We must figure it out. Not alone. There are people out there that can help, but you must figure it out, and looking to conventional methods will only take you through a tunnel that the light you see at the end is not the end of the tunnel, but a train coming straight at you and is not slowing down. We have to heal ourselves. And today we talk about that. Enjoy this episode with Neil Cannon.
Today I have a guest. I always love to bring guests on because I love to learn. So these guests always teach me something, and of course they can teach you in the audience also just a couple of things. So today we have as a guest Neil Cannon. And of course, as we always start, we like to know how people get to where they are. So Neil, how long, well, you've been on this journey for a long time, but how did you get to where you are today? How long and how windy has this journey been for you?
Yeah, thank you, Benjamin. And firstly, thank you for having me on your podcast. It's an honor. So yeah, as you clearly know, everyone who works in holistic health has some kind of story, some kind of recovery, healing story, something that got them to kind of change direction, often quite radically. And I do fit into that category for both myself and also my father. So my story in a nutshell was 30 years worth of eczema, and I was always given the same symptom masking treatments, which meant it would always come back. So steroid creams, which have left pigmentation on my skin, and prescription moisturizers with pretty nasty ingredients in them, antibiotics when it got really bad. And never was I given any kind of inclination as to what might be causing it. And it wasn't until my father suffered a stroke about 10 years ago when I really started to look into the underlying cause, because I kind of had this inner knowing, my innate intelligence was telling me that his stroke was avoidable. It didn't come from any books, well, maybe from some books I was reading, but I did keep on seeing this word inflammation everywhere. And very, very quickly, having decided to go on a bit of a research quest to kind of prove my inner knowing, I discovered that chronic inflammation was the underlying cause of not just his stroke, but also the hypertension that ultimately led to his stroke, or high blood pressure, and also the asthma he'd had since 12 years old, a fully reversible condition. It's chronic inflammation of the bronchial tubes. So then I realized it was the same underlying cause of my eczema, and I made some lifestyle changes, dietary changes, and very quickly it went away. So really understanding chronic inflammation is what changed my direction, if you like, and what I decided to write a book on it. And that was the last book I wrote in 2016 called The Vitality Secret. Do you mind if I just quickly do a quick
Yes.
that one? So sure. That's The Vitality Secret I wrote in 2016, which reveals the underlying cause of almost every chronic illness, which is chronic inflammation. And my coaching and mentoring has really stemmed around getting to the cause of the inflammation. And I've done that for about 7 years now with my clients and customers. That's my story in a nutshell.
And I completely agree with you. I do believe that chronic inflammation is one of the main causes of why most people are sick today. Of course, you look back and say you have to find out, well, what's causing this chronic inflammation. And hopefully we can dive into that in this episode of the Wellness Farmer Podcast. And we can talk about, well, imagine there's a lot of things that causes this chronic inflammation. But yeah, I agree with you 100%. The majority of illness that we've experienced today, not only illness, pain. I mean, just back pains, just pains
Mm.
overall. It's all either chronically or acute inflammation based, and majority of the diseases that we suffer are chronic inflammation over time. But so that is interesting. We have definitely learned, I imagine, through different channels and different ways of learning, but I've learned that basically pretty much all disease is inflammation based. So what did you find out, and how did you figure out how to help yourself, I imagine, with the eczema, and how did you find out to help your dad continue to heal in a way that's, which I love, naturally? What did you find?
Yeah. So, like everyone, I started with diet, and I'd read a few books on anti-inflammatory living. And it wasn't kind of your standard eat your macros kind of diet. It was what's inflammatory, what is toxic. What are you eating? What am I eating that is toxic in the body? That's going to cause an immune reaction. What doesn't my body recognize? You're talking about nature earlier. I always take it back to nature. If we're eating something out of alignment with the nature codes, then there's a good chance that it's going to cause an inflammatory response, because the body reacts in a way which it doesn't recognize what's entering it. And there's a lot of stuff in our standard American diet, or standard diet, you might tell I'm from the UK, where we're eating stuff which is causing inflammation every time. And I used to have what I now call, I joke about it, a bowl of inflammation for breakfast every morning. So I had my wheat cereals. Thankfully, my mum was pretty conscious and didn't like us having sugar, sugary cereals. But we still had wheat and milk. And they're the first two things I took out. And for so many people, not for everyone, because everybody is different, for the vast majority of people I've worked with, an elimination of gluten and dairy can make a huge change and create transformation. So those are two kind of staple culprits. But then I really looked at everything else as well. Fried foods, artificial flavorings and preservatives and colorings, and GMOs, a terrible thing in America. We are more strict about them in the UK and Europe, particularly in Scandinavia. But in America, GMOs are a real challenge. And there's a brilliant documentary called GMO OMG that really reveals the harm of GMOs. And really, we're talking about wheat, or wheat is strictly hybridized and it's mutagenesis. And then there's corn, and there's soy, and some other like cottonseed and some others like that. Sugar, for example, big one. That's a big inflammatory one for a lot of people. So I started making these changes, and I noticed a difference. And I started working with people with eczema very, very soon after I cleared mine up, and similar things worked. So that's just from a dietary perspective. And as you alluded to earlier, it's a number of different approaches. So whilst my 2016 book is mostly about diet, anti-inflammatory diet and healing the gut, and really loading up on micronutrients, those vitamins and minerals, predominantly from plant-based foods. It also included a bit on exercise and grounding and managing stress. But now it's evolved to, I call it the 4 pillars of vitality. So we address the 4 pillars: so physical, mental, emotional, and energetic. So we need to address every angle. I don't see food as the cause of illness. I see that it's a way of, it can be a form of medicine, if you like, to help to heal. It can be regarded as a catalyst if things are not good underneath. If the cause is there and it's not being addressed, food helps a great deal. But really getting to the cause means going through each pillar. And the emotional one is huge. It's one that I didn't pay much attention to in the first few years, because I just couldn't get my head around how emotion could cause illness. But now I understand the physics of emotions, and that they're electromagnetic bundles of energy that can literally drop the electricity in your body, the voltage to be more precise. A huge focus of my work is the body electric, and helping my clients reverse engineer their symptoms. So that's a long answer to your question. It's really those 4 pillars: physical, mental, emotional, energetic, and treating the body as a whole.
And it's interesting. And I really like to dive into that, what you were talking about, the whole body electric, and how that can help so much with our healing, and how important emotional is. Because food, I see how people are starting, I mean, it's still the minority, but people are starting to see how terrible food really is. And it's really hard to find clean food if you're just going to the supermarkets. And just by, like you were saying, by just getting rid of any type of food that you find in the center aisles of the supermarket, you're going to see a huge change in your health. And once you see that change, then it starts to you start to look into other things. But food usually is like that beginning point where people can actually change quickly and see changes in their overall health. And
100%.
that's how I used to be too. I used to try and look for those anti-inflammatory foods, and I've gotten to the point where it's becoming the way I eat is actually pretty laser focused, and I believe people should become laser focused on how they eat. Most people look for the great palette, the great colors, and the different tastes, and I'm like, no, the more laser focused you are, the better off you are. That's a whole different conversation though. But I would like to get into this how you began to understand how the body is just a big electric ball, and how emotions can affect that the electricity of our body. Because one more thing real quick is the importance, like you're saying, grounding, which is also electric. I mean, we're just helping our body neutralize free radicals with electrons, with electricity, basically, and that's how we can decrease inflammation overall. But this whole body electric and emotion, I would like to dive into that and see how we can help, what we can learn from what you've learned in this whole aspect of one of your points of vitality, one of your pillars of vitality.
Yeah, absolutely. I love this subject. I actually used to be an electrician for a few years back in early 2010, and I was doing house renovations, and I decided to get a qualification. So when I discovered the body electric, everything just kind of fell into place. And like many things, it was my own suffering that led to a discovery of the body electric. So I had a minor thing going on. I had a cold that I couldn't shake for about a month, but it was really unusual because I was living in LA. I was really fit, I'd say, consuming anti-inflammatory food, anti-inflammatory lifestyle. I was active, I was working out, I was doing yoga, I was veggie juicing every single day, getting good sleep, plenty of sunlight, grounding, all of the things. Yet I couldn't shake off this cold, and I rarely get sick. So I went to go and see a kinesiologist in Costa Mesa, which is about an hour south of LA, and recommended to me by my friend and business partner at the time. He said this guy just changed his life, or helped him change his life. And within 10 minutes, this chiropractor kinesiologist, he said, you have depolarized three teeth on this side of your mouth where you hold your phone. So I was regularly talking on my phone like this. And he said, these three teeth, he pointed specifically to the ones because he tested each of my teeth. And he said, they've been depolarized, most likely by your phone. And he said, this is happening to a lot of people. And I looked at him like he was, I don't know, from outer space. Going, what are you talking about? Depolarizing? What does that mean? So he said, our teeth act like circuit breakers. And he said, we're wired up like a house with all of our organs on different circuits. And they all pass through our teeth, which act like circuit breakers. So if your teeth get blown and they get depolarized, it means that they've flipped polarity. So all of our cells in our bodies, call them 50 trillion cells or 100 trillion cells, depending on which cell biologist you talk to, we're a lot of cells, and they're charged electrically, net negative charge. Every one of those cells is net negatively charged. And in the mouth, if they flip to a positive charge, if the teeth flip to a positive charge, they flip polarity, it becomes depolarized. And therefore, it drops the voltage in the circuit, and every tooth that he pointed to was connected to my immune system. So he rectified my challenge in like two sittings with lasers, scalar energy lasers. And he just directed lasers onto my teeth, and then my cold went away. So then I started looking into the body electric. I also started thinking, how many people in this world are wandering around with all kinds of chronic illnesses, thinking they have a genetic disease or an incurable disease, and it might be as simple as that. So when I work with my clients, one of the first things we do within a few weeks is we look at the tooth chart and we look at their teeth and what might be standing in the way of the electrical flow, the flow of electrons around the body. So certain things can disrupt that, like infected root canals, mercury, cavities. And there's a lot of things in the mouth that can actually affect the circuitry in the body, which drops the voltage, which is as if not enough power is going to your organ in question. So around this time, I watched a very good documentary or presentation called Healing is Voltage by Dr. Jerry Tennant, and everything came together. It's like bombshell after bombshell, aha moment after aha moment. It was 7 years at the time of being in holistic health. Everything became clear. And he said a characteristic of all chronic illness is low voltage to an organ. So not enough power going to the organ. Electrical medicine or electrotherapy dates back hundreds of years prior to what we now know as Western medicine. And there's lots of incredible ways that we can raise the voltage in our body and get the systems working again. So that's in a nutshell, the body electric.
And I would actually, so is there a way we can, where can you find this whole graph or this what can you call it, this
mouth chart?
Yeah, the mouth chart. That is very interesting. I've never heard of that.
Oh, sorry, I just got kicked out. Are we still recording?
We are still recording. Yep.
Wow. I'm glad that was just very quick. So, yes, I've put the tooth chart in my latest book, but a book that I recommend is Healing is Voltage. It's in that. It's packed, otherwise I'll just grab it for you. There's a tooth chart. You can look at the mouth wide open, you look at all the numbers of the teeth, top and bottom, and there's correlations between different organs and even joints, like knee joints, and different parts of the body that correlate with the different teeth. So, for example, I work with a guy who's a friend now. He had type 1 diabetes, and which is very, very difficult to reverse. Like type 2 is super easy to reverse. You just anti-inflammatory diet and clean the body out, clean the inflammation out, and you can become insulin sensitive again and reverse it. I mean, I say it so easy. There's a lot of psychology that goes into it, but for the most part, reversing type 2 diabetes is fairly straightforward. Type 1 diabetes is a much harder one because it's an autoimmune disease normally that's, if it's triggered in life, it's an autoimmune disease as a result of leaky gut, which can be reversed. It's just harder. So what is type 1 diabetes? It's when the pancreas isn't firing correctly. There's not enough power going to the pancreas. It's not a genetic disease. It's not enough power going to the pancreas. So one of the first things I did with him was we looked at the tooth chart, and he had mercury, 4 fillings, which all directly or indirectly affected the pancreas. So he actually had his mercury out within about 6 weeks. But by the way, you have to do super, super carefully. Some people get their mercury out and they get mercury poisoning. So it's got to be done so carefully by a biological dentist or a holistic dentist. So I connected him with the right person or someone I recommended. And even within 24 hours, he noticed a shift in his energy. And prior to that, he was getting all kinds of colds, which obviously were connected with his immune system. He was just getting colds all the time. And he said that shifted within a few months, that he just wasn't getting these colds anymore. The type D, I'd love to say the type 1 is completely reversed. I don't think it's completely reversed yet, but he noticed a shift. So, and he's still on that journey. You know, that's been a lifelong thing. But it's very, very interesting making these correlations, because sometimes you can have an infected root canal taken out and the symptom goes away. It can be that simple. For others, it's peeling back the layers of the onion, you know, removing those toxicities, rebuilding the gut, rebuilding whatever needs to be rebuilt, creating that environment for the body to heal itself, which is ultimately what we're doing all the time. So it's just one example of how correlations can be made quite quickly with the body electric and the teeth.
And I've never really heard anything about that. So that is something very interesting. And just by taking out some mercury fillings, people see such a a change. I mean, that is really neat. And I understand how we're holistic and everything affects everything, but for some reason, I never brought the teeth into being part of that holistic healing process, which is very interesting. I mean, that is very neat, and it's so true, because we do heal as a total. I mean, so we have to look into everything and see what's going on, which is very interesting. And teeth has never been something that I looked into really. So going back to this whole energy, I mean, so teeth are an important part. How else do you help people make these emotional changes so the energy can flow properly through the body, and the proper energy can hit what needs to be hit, so you can heal yourself naturally, because that's what we do. We heal ourselves naturally. But how have you seen, or what other methods have you seen to help people with emotional maybe trauma, I guess we can call it, and kind of get that ball of energy to be firing properly, or get to the place where it needs to go properly?
Yes, great question. So emotions are stored like electromagnetic bundles of energy. There's a slogan that says, "The organs weep the tears the eyes refuse to shed." When we experience events in our lives, and it might be as minor as an argument with a sibling or a parent when you're 5 years old, if something kind of jolts you out of that alignment, and it's left that kind of imprint, that energy can be stored in the body, and it can be stored in any organ. It can be stored in joints. It can be stored anywhere in the body. So I've had some clients where we've done the work, which is basically kinesiology, asking their body where the emotions are stored, when they were stored, and if they were inherited in this lifetime, as a result of this lifetime, or inherited. There's like a sequence we go through with the emotion code, it's called. So the way I describe or think of emotions, so we've talked about the body electric, and we've talked about the flow of electricity. So if there's not enough power going to a lamp and the lamp is flickering, what we'd do as an electrician is we'd go and reverse engineer why that lamp is flickering. Why is it dodgy? And you'd find, I don't know, a rusty cable or a dodgy switch. In the human body, it could be almost like that with the mouth. It could be, rusty, dodgy switch. It could be the tooth, for example, or there could be something or dropping the flow of electrons, which might be emotions. So emotions are electromagnetic bundles of energy, and they can get stored anywhere. Because they are electromagnetic, we can release them with magnets. This is going to sound completely crazy to a lot of people until we really understand us as energy beings, electromagnetic energy beings, because we are actually more energy than we are physical. So we can use applied kinesiology to find out which is the best intelligence we can get involved with. The body keeps a score. There's many kind of sayings around this. The body doesn't lie. The body is like its own database of intelligence, of memory, and it knows what the body has been presented with since conception, or even before. But let's keep it relatively down to earth. So if we can ask the body if there are any emotions stored in X organ, we can find out when it was stored, the name of the emotion, and then we can release it after finding out whether it's this lifetime or another one, and then we can release it with magnets down the central meridian. It's quite profound. I've had some clients with knee pain, lower back pain, shoulder pain. When there's pain involved, it's easier to get a result because, or at least more visual and more tangible, because we can notice the pain go very quickly. What I like about that is if there's a pain and that pain goes away, and that same client has some kind of other illness, they then have the confidence to say, oh, okay, so it worked for my pain, therefore it can also work for another organ in my body. So that's one method of releasing emotions. There's many ways. There's shaking, there's trauma release therapy, there's plant medicines. I did ayahuasca a few weeks ago. My body was shaking a lot, particularly my legs, breath work is phenomenal for releasing emotions and that energy that gets trapped. Are you familiar with that analogy of when animals get chased and then they shake?
I've heard of that. Yep, and that's how they get. Yep, and that's how they go back from sympathetic to parasympathetic. Yeah.
Yeah, and so a lion chases a zebra, and providing the zebra doesn't get chased, the zebra will shake. And we can see it with dogs and cats. We see it all the time. So we haven't been taught how to do that. So they are releasing that energy from the body, and we can do that as humans. So trauma release exercises is a way to actually prepare the body and the legs to create that shaking response.
To let that emotion go, just to let
Yes.
it go. Yeah, that emotion. Well, I guess we can call it an emotional trauma. So, and I do believe that we are basically a ball of energy. Yeah, and I mean, the faster we can help our big ball of energy, which turned into a pretty cool shape after all. I enjoy our shape, the way that we've been shaped over as human beings. But is if we can have fluid energy through and up and out and back in, I mean, there's absolutely no reason why we can't heal ourselves from pretty much anything. And I've talked to people, and I've heard people of healing from things that were supposedly uncurable. So it is possible. The thing is how do we go about doing it? And using this energy is a great way to help people find, well, what is causing me to not fully heal from certain things. And I've seen that in clinical practice. I'll help people and almost everyone gets better, but then there's that 10% of people that just don't get better, and even if they involve everything that I've been telling them to do. And it's got to be that imbalance of energy. It's got to be.
Yeah, I was interviewing someone. I've just finished editing my own podcast, actually, of someone who reversed cancer against all the odds. He was given a 100% chance of death if he didn't operate. So he's like, well, you're fired. And he went about healing himself holistically. And the majority of the results was through energy and getting to the trauma. And really, he was doing kind of rebirthing and all kinds of stuff to get to the cause of the illness, to get to the cause of the cancer. And he traced it back to, I think he said 3 years old or 5 years old. It's huge. And like you said, the body does heal itself. It's always healing. If you cut your arm, you can virtually see it heal. And that's not just the skin. It happens all over the body. And we know with the science of epigenetics that it's the environment in the body that signals the health of our cells. It's not the genes that trigger the illness. So epigenetics, epi means above, genes are below. The genes are like the hardware. Epigenetics is the software. So the epigenetics runs the hardware. Epigenetics is the environment. So if we create an environment conducive to healing, that's how we reverse illness. And we just have to find out where the toxins are, if there are insufficient cell fuels, what's blocking the healing, how are we standing in the way? And then we go to the mental and the emotional piece, because that's huge. We can block healing with our thoughts. We can also create healing with our thoughts. We know the placebo effect is scientifically proven. It's responsible for around a third of results in randomized placebo trials. We know it's scientifically proven. And talking about energy, I'm attending a Dr. Joe Dispenza live advanced retreat again next week. I went in June as well. People are attending these events and reversing the most incurable of illnesses we could possibly imagine. And they're doing so by entering the quantum field ultimately and connecting with a field of intelligence far greater than any of us, and ultimately shifting their personality to create a new reality. And it's remarkable what people are doing in the world of energy and the quantum.
And if you just think about it, it makes complete sense. It makes complete sense. It's exactly what I tell my patients. I mean, healing is you heal you, and all you have to do, it's very simple to understand, not so easy to implement. But if you put your internal and external environments if you put yourself into an internal external environment that's healthy, you will heal, because your body will do the rest. So if you have an internal environment that's healthy, which is difficult, I mean, especially with modern society, with everyone looking like they're doing so much better than we are always, and we put ourselves into an internal environment that's not healthy. Yeah, of course we're not going to heal. Same thing with our external environments. And I tell them it's simple. It's not easy to implement. And I think the internal environment's even more difficult because it's a lot more painful to go through. And most people just don't find the strength, the emotional strength to truly take on that pain and really heal from it. I've seen in my own personal case too. I mean, it's very painful. It's a painful experience to go through. And some people they get there so close and then they back off because it's so painful. But if you truly want to heal, you have to put your internal environment into a healthy environment too.
Yeah, it's a really great point, and about it being painful. What I love about somatic release is you don't have to go and relive memories. So in talk therapy, for example, which could be years, and what often happens is the patient gets worse and worse and worse because there's a term in neuroscience that says nerve cells that fire together wire together. The more we talk about an event, the more it becomes energized. Whatever we give attention to is what we give energy to. So if we talk about a trauma again and again and again and again, so much energy is around that trauma, it ends up being counterproductive. Whereas, and I agree, that becomes painful. However, if you do somatic release, you don't have to go into the memory. You might just ask the body some, for example, with kinesiology, you can ask the body, is there a trapped emotion behind symptom X? And what normally the body says is, yes, there is. And you find out the name of the emotion. So let's say it's in the lung and there's grief, which is typically where grief is stored, or anger in the liver. There's a chart. I don't even have it here. I have. Look at this. Might even be used. If this isn't just audio, this is like the emotion code chart. There are 60 emotions, and you can see where the emotions are stored. So, for example, liver is associated with anger and bitterness and guilt and hatred, resentment. And then in the heart, there might be love unreceived, or betrayal, or abandonment. And there's a correlation between the names of the emotions and where they're stored. We don't have to go and relive the memory. That's what I love about somatic trauma release. So what you've said is quite common with what I'm hearing. And the moment people understand that they don't have to go and talk about it and relive it is the moment that changes. And there's a great saying, Dr. Joe Dispenza, a memory without the emotional charge is wisdom. So it doesn't have that charge anymore. Anyone can talk about it and it doesn't trigger a response. Yeah. It's very, very powerful.
It is. It's powerful. I think that's a great way to end is just in that. I mean, it doesn't have to trigger. It can be something that's peaceful and we can heal. And I think that's a great way to end. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your wisdom with me and also my listeners, as this will be published soon. How can they get to know more about what you're doing, Neil?
Yes, thank you. My website is vitalitysecret.com. Secret, singular, not secrets. vitalitysecret.com. And just the front page of the website kind of explains in brief how I work with people. They can download the Vitality Secret from 2016 for free, the e-copy at vitalitysecret.com/book. And yeah, there's an opportunity there on the website to book a discovery call if someone wants to talk to me, to potentially ask for my support or for us to kind of discover if we're a good working arrangement, a good fit. So we do an online program and I have private coaching as well.
Perfect. Are you on social media too, by any chance? Do you get out there on?
I am. I'm not the best on social media, to be honest. But I'll share it anyway. Neil Cannon Vitality on Instagram. Facebook, I'm Neil Cannon 1980. Don't know why I gave my title. I can't ever change that. And Twitter, I'm not really active on Twitter. I'm not even going to bother. Instagram is probably the best place.
Cool. And that's where I am too. So I'll be tagging you there. And
Brilliant.
Of course, everything will be in the show notes. So if anybody wants to find anything about Neil, it'll be in the show notes. Just go down to the show notes to the page and you'll find all the information right there. Again, thanks a lot for coming on, Neil. I appreciate you coming on and sharing your wisdom with my listeners and myself.
You're very welcome. Thank you, Benjamin. It's been a pleasure. I hope this has been valuable for your listeners.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode as much as I did with Neil Cannon on the importance of us healing ourselves and how we can do that. Before I let you go, of course, I have to remind you that this podcast is a grassroots movement. We grow because one person at a time gets the word out. The best way to get the word out is by leaving a review of the podcast wherever you listen to this podcast. I read each one and I appreciate them more than you know. Join my email list. You'll never miss a podcast. You'll never miss an episode. And you also get a book free, Earth and Us, Heal Naturally. You also can join the Facebook group that's private for free and ask me any question, and I will do my best to answer that question. Another great way to support me is by buying my books. I have a couple books out: Playing in the Dirt, The Four Pillars of Health, and a short ebook called Mental Wellbeing Made Simple, all available on my website, pastosvertesfarm.com. And we are in the season of giving. So if you want to give a gift that keeps on giving, books are the way to give it. And if you buy more than 2 books from my website, you get an extra 30% off. You're buying books for $10 a book if you buy more than 1 book. So go to Pastos Verdes Farm, buy your gifts for your loved ones today, and let's give the gift of healing. I'm going to give just a little update about our comfrey salve too. Again, I use it personally. That's why I offer it, and that's why I offer it to other people, because I use it personally. It's helped me so much. Again, I'm treating patients, so I started to feel just a slight pain on the under portion of my elbow because I use a lot of movement in my elbow with against a lot of weight. So I applied it there. 30, 40 minutes later, I was back to normal, not feeling any pain. This stuff works. I use it. I use it whenever I need it. And it can help you also with all those physical breaks. Hopefully you never do. Bumps, bruises, falls, cuts, scrapes, rips, burns, bug bites, and tears of life. Go to my website, pastosvertesfarm.com, and see 16 reviews of how it's been helping so many other people. And finally, if you want to work deeper with me, join my membership where I help you understand the importance of our connection to nature and your innate ability to heal yourself. You can get more information about that at pastosvertesfarm.com/subscription. Hope to talk to you personally soon. See you next time.